Did you know that good bread is the most wholesome, most digestible as well as one of the cheapest foods that you can serve? The more bread and flour you serve your family, the smaller your food bills. Bread furnishes the greatest amount of food value for the money expended, and is the most important article of food. Perhaps we never realized this until we were deprived of bread during the period of conservation. Considering its great value, it is surprising how few housewives understand how to make a good loaf of bread or pan of rolls. The process of making these yeast mixtures is most interesting, and a little careful study and practice will surely reward you for your time and trouble. To keep the dough from cooling, mix and knead it quickly. In cool weather, the bowl containing the dough may be set in a pan of warm water. The longer the batter is beaten, the less kneading the dough will require. When dough can be lifted in a mass on a spoon, it is ready to knead. Dough is kneaded to mix the ingredients thoroughly, to make the gluten elastic and to work in the air. It is sufficiently kneaded when it can be left on the board for a minute or more without sticking. Dough, containing large bubbles, has risen too long or too fast. It should be cut down and re-kneaded to distribute the gas evenly. Always make small loaves to ensure bread being baked through. In large loaves, the heat may fail to penetrate to the center. If bread rises much after being put in the oven, the heat is not great enough, but if it begins to brown in less than 15 minutes, the heat is too great. The first 10 minutes the loaves are in the oven, they should merely rise and perhaps begin to show a little brown in spots. The second period of 10 minutes they should become a delicate brown all over their surface and cease to rise. The third period they should finish browning, and the fourth they should shrink slightly from the pans. After the first 10 minutes the oven heat can be decreased slightly, and as baking continues it may be lessened still more. The reason for the hotter oven at first is that the growth of the yeast plant must be checked early in the baking, or the loaf will become too porous, and this can be accomplished only by a heat great enough to penetrate to the very center of the loaf. When baking is completed, the loaves will give forth a hollow sound when tapped, and will shrink from the pan. After baking, remove the bread at once from the pans and allow to cool in fresh air, uncovered. Do not put away until perfectly cold. Mrs. Belle De Graf's white bread. 1 cup boiling water or scalded milk, 1 tablespoon melted shortening, 1 tablespoon sugar, 1 teaspoon salt, 1/2 yeast cake dissolved in 1/4 cup lukewarm water, between 3 and 4 cups white flour. Put shortening, sugar and salt in scalded liquid. Let stand until lukewarm. Add dissolved yeast and flour gradually, beating well until too stiff to stir. Turn on molding board and knead in remaining flour until the mixture is smooth, until it does not stick to hands or board and bubbles may be seen under the surface. Return to well-greased bowl, brush dough over with melted shortening. Cover and allow to rise in a warm place to twice its original size. Then knead dough in bowl and let rise again. This second kneading, after having risen once, gives a much finer grain to bread and should always be used. When dough has again risen to double its bulk, it will be ready to shape into loaves or rolls. Place loaves in well-greased pans, having them about half full. Brush both bread and rolls with melted shortening, let rise again to double their size, and bake in a hot oven about 45 minutes for medium-sized loaves, and from 20 to 30 minutes for rolls, according to size. This quantity of dough is for 1 large loaf of bread or pan of rolls. With 1/2 yeast cake used to each 1/2 pint measuring cup of liquid, bread can be made and completed if kept in a warm room in about 5 hours. If a longer period is given to the rising process, less yeast will be required. 1/4 yeast cake to each cup of liquid is sufficient if dough is set overnight. In either case, the same method of preparation is used. The liquid is scalded to sterilize it, so as to avoid the presence of other organisms than the yeast. Of course, the scalded liquid must never be used until lukewarm, otherwise it will kill the yeast plant. Tea rolls. Use white bread foundation. When dough is light, knead lightly and cut in pieces about the size of a walnut. Brush with melted shortening and place close together in a well-greased pan. 1 additional tablespoon of sugar for each cup of liquid improves these rolls. Parker house rolls. Use white bread foundation. After dough has risen to double its bulk the second time, roll into a sheet about 1 inch thick. Cut with a biscuit cutter, then with the handle of a knife dipped in melted shortening, fold over and place close together in a well-greased pan. Set in a warm place until light, then bake in a hot oven. When baked, brush over with melted shortening or the unbeaten white of egg. The white of egg gives a high gloss. For help with the yeast measurements, refer to the link in the description below.